All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of our legislative interview series. I'm Kevin Scorsone, Government Affairs Director at RRAR. Joining me today is Matt Fowler, Executive Director of Triangle MLS. Matt, thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So first up, Matt, I want to give our audience an overview of what TMLS does and the role you play within RRAR and the organization. So feel free to take it away and give us a little insight into your background and to the background of TMLS.
Yeah, thanks again, Kevin. That's a great opening question. And I find that so many people, not just my family, have no idea what I do or what an MLS is. So I'm the executive director, as you said, of Triangle Multiple Listing Service Incorporated. We're a for-profit North Carolina corporation that is owned entirely by the Raleigh Regional Association of Realtors, RRAR, as you said, and you have to slow down when you say that. You sound all like mouth frozen or something. Um, so Raleigh Regional Association of Realtors, a nonprofit, um, you know, branch or outpost of the National Association of Realtors, uh, owns Triangle, having started the MLS years ago. And about 18 months ago, they hired me to be their first independent executive director. So before this, it's always been run sort of as a committee by the Raleigh CEO, Dave Phillips' current job. So for the first time ever, I'm a recovering real estate appraiser and former software executive, now running the eighth largest MLS in the South Central Atlantic division that we're in, and the 33rd largest in the country.
So I would assume that a lot of the work you do is filled with data, correct? I mean, there's a lot of data involved with the housing markets, especially now. I think as time goes on with anything, whether it be sports, politics, the housing market, more data is available. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, spot on, Kevin, which is why they hired a software executive to run what is really a database company, a data company.
So
We're the
yeah, I want to touch on that briefly. So your background in software, was it a tough transition for you to come into the housing market? I know you mentioned as a real estate appraiser, you had that
Mhm.
background, but this is something different. And was that a daunting task at first for you to kind of take on?
Yeah, it's so interesting. It is different, um, kind of, but it's almost like I'm at the same table I've been in for the last 20 years. I'm just on the other side of it, and explain that. So the company that I started back in 1998, when I was still an appraiser, made multiple listing service software like the Paragon product that the Triangle and subscribers use today. It's made by a company called Black Knight. My company was called Solid Earth, and um, my product was called Listed, and it competed directly with Paragon back in the day, and did very well. So I come to like negotiate the contract with Black Knight and talk to the other MLS providers out there, including the one that bought my company, with a level of knowledge about their businesses that almost nobody in my role has had. I don't know of another software CEO that's currently running a multiple listing service company. Um, and the 16,000 or so subscribers of the Triangle area get the benefit of that experience. And we're doing some things at Triangle this fall that aren't done uh, normally at the MLS level. And there's so many of them, we don't have time to get into them today. But the things that we're doing are going to make Triangle behave more like a software company or a commercial data company than um, a maybe less agile company that we've been in the past.
So I think a great segue is one of the questions that I had before we get into actual housing stuff, like the data.
Mm.
What are some goals of TMLS then moving into the new year, and how do you plan to evolve as everything it seems to be evolving, whether it be the housing market or, you know, professional life
Yeah.
in general is evolving?
Well, Kevin, reading between the lines there, I think you and I are seeing the pace of change that's happening
Yeah.
in housing and technology. You mentioned sports. Got some friends working in over there and with AI, and I mean, before we can get to AI, okay, and we do have a lot of projects, not just on the drawing board, but actually in production. Um, and we're using it to do all sorts of things. Like generative AI is a game changer for sure, and we're embedded in it. But before we can get there, man, it's like crawl, walk, run. Um, Triangle has deferred maintenance. Okay, that's the phrase that I've been using with my board of directors. I think it's one that we can all kind of get our brains around. It's a solid company, very solid, but it has some broken windows, metaphorically. There's until August the 7th, there was an 8.5 by 11 PDF form on trianglemls.com that you had to fill out and send to me to kick off the membership. And I mean, it's an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It drives me crazy. You can tell that we're in 2023 and that's not a button. So the fields on that form are known to me from the North Carolina Real Estate Commission or the National Association of Realtors or a number of other database sources that we can just call up programmatically without having to make you fill all that in. And we did that with the launch of our new billing system. So we now have joining the MLS um, from start to finish in under 2 minutes. That's including provision of the MLS software, turning it on. So automation, in answer to your question, we're bringing automation to Triangle in order to build efficiencies, accuracy, and ease of use into our systems. We're also focusing on the accuracy and completeness of the data. Accuracy is a big deal, but we can talk about, but completeness, we've recognized that people looking for houses in this area want to know if broadband is available, if fiber is in the house, if there are green energy features that would make the cost of owning a home in our new climate less scary for a 35-year-old first-time homebuyer. They want to know about those things. So to help our broker community, we have a new integration with the Green Building Registry and with a new company called Fiber Homes. And on October 10th, when we launch our new listing management system, those fields will be automatically filled out when somebody adds a new listing. So on your property search site, because this data is going to be IDXable, you can actually put a fiber yes, no in your search form for buyers on your own brand. And I think that that's an indication of the kind of things that Triangle is trying to do to build the accuracy and completeness of the data.
Yeah, that's
finally,
right
finally,
there.
let me tell you this one last goal, and I'll stop with that one. Then it's about choice. So in the fourth quarter, we haven't set a date yet. We're going to add 3 tiles to the dashboard that Triangle makes you go through on the way into the system so that we can do some things we need to do. And one of the things is to give you the ability to turn on a different MLS interface if you prefer Matrix or you prefer Flex MLS over Paragon. We're never going to make you move off of Paragon. But if you want to use Matrix because you work near Fayetteville or you work near Burlington, and that's the software that you're accustomed to, Triangle is not going to be in the business of telling you what interface you should use. We're going to make all of them available, and we're going to make the data accurate across the board. So coming before the end of the year is something called front end of choice, and you'll be able to choose between those 3, or if you want to, you can sign up for all 3 coming before the end of the year.
So that's great. What you just said there sort of resonates with me and is sort of a lead into one of my questions. How does the cost of living in Raleigh, including housing cost, impact the future of this area, number one? But the real thing that resonated with me was having that ability to use the different MLS systems, because you might have to be moving a little bit farther out. So do you foresee more people moving farther out into other areas and commuting into Cary, commuting into Raleigh in order to afford housing? Is that something that you think is just going to become the norm? I mean, for me, like, I try to convince my wife every day to move to Pinehurst because I love Pinehurst. I would just
Yeah,
say I'll commute to Cary every day. I'll drive the hour and 15 minutes. I don't
sure.
care. Is that
Yeah,
something happening?
well, I mean that's the thing, right? My communication director lives in Southern Pines. Um, we're remote as a company now, so people are all over. And I think that the trend is absolutely something that our buddies in the mortgage industry say is drive till you qualify. So, you get in your car at work and you drive however far you have to drive to get to somewhere you can make the monthlies at a 7% uh, mortgage rate. So that pushes people out into undeveloped land. Um, the Urban Land Institute is an organization that we track a lot and spend time with, and those guys would refer to that as sprawl. And your answer or the answer about the cost is absolutely going to drive people into more affordable areas. It's not always out. Orange and Chatham are a little outside of the Raleigh core, but they're the most expensive to market in the Metroplex. They're both average over 630, 640. That's average, right? So, uh, you're not going to make that at the Amazon warehouse or, as most teachers. So we have to be, I think we have to be active. Um, the MLS is trying to get real and local data out to policymakers and developers who are looking at where are we going to put housing. Um, we don't. I, I wrote an answer for you, Kevin, earlier that's kind of dissing Atlanta. Like, do we want to live in a place that has the places where people live laid out that way, or Austin, a place with this huge north-south gridlock that they did to themselves, and I think we have some of the smartest, just people in the country in our area. We're working closely with the Keenan Flagler School at UNC and with a new internship program to analyze this data and to produce reports that we hope basically just tell this story about the need for infill development. We're not a political organization, but I think where more residential units are legal on places where there's already housing, um, checks a lot of boxes for walkability and for uh, you know not building brand new roads or new utilities or new water treatment plants. Those things are currently existing and many of them under capacity in the central core, and we can build housing like all the apartments that you see blowing up everywhere. That's a great response, and the rise in rent rates are already flattening and even falling in some places, but only in those places where construction has happened. There are places where it hasn't, and rate did not fall in those areas. So affordability is an enormous issue. We talk about it all the time. There's an Axios article today that features Triangle MLS that says that it's the lowest it's ever been, currently 71 in the 16 county area.
I mean, you mentioned something there that's important for people to know, and I think as much as we want to see everyone in a home owning the home, rentals are going to be a thing that has to be considered until people save up enough money. You mentioned earlier that 35-year-old first-time home buyer. I got
Yeah,
lucky and bought my house 5 years ago, but when I first moved here from New York, but if I was buying now with my wife, and I don't know if it would be as easy of a move. I think renting would be one of those things that would have to be considered. Is there, I guess my question is there any work being done? Do you guys see that as something that you could get into at some point as being okay, we're gonna help people find rentals too, as opposed to
yeah, yeah. So we really have. In January, we launched a partnership with a company called Rental Beast, and they are rental specialists, whereas Paragon is really not. The rental category in Paragon for the professionals out there know that it's pretty thin. Paragon was designed to sell houses, not rent.
right.
And you can tell commercial is really weak in it too. So we have this partnership with Rental Beast because they specialize in that sector, and we look at those people, most of them as future home buyers. So to the extent that the realtors can be in their orbit, it's a good thing. Now we have our listings at rentalbeef.com. We're about to start to release some Triangle branded portals. There'll be a trianglemls.com with a property search function this fall. And you may see a Triangle branded rental site in the future as well. That simply promotes the rental inventory of the property manager networks that are part of one of our 5 realtor associations that are members of the Triangle Regional, because we think that rental is important, and a it's a good solution for people in transition in the situation that you just described. It isn't going to help us with wealth inequality, and from a policy standpoint, I believe most people think that's the most serious issue that we face as Americans is the increasing wealth inequality, and developing tools for solving that issue is not within the scope of the executive director of the MLS, thank God. But we can inform policymakers, and we can certainly use what little stage that we have to talk about the fact that it's that in Orange County today, the median income is less than half of what's necessary to qualify for a median price home. And
I,
I, I,
I look
I
at it.
think it's important for people to hear that.
Yeah, it's super important. And I've said this on previous episodes of this. I just like to think about if you're a couple and you're both elementary school teachers, which isn't a crazy notion. I mean, 2 teachers living
Sure.
together. My neighbors are 2 teachers, and he tells me all the time. He says, if we were buying a house today, if we didn't start our career 30 years ago, I wouldn't be buying a house today.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's
So I
because,
think So I think I'm throwing anecdotes at you, Kevin, but I think like the reason that that guy can't buy a house is because of the rapid appreciation that really happened
of course,
during and after COVID, like 40% or some craziness over like a 3-year period that just happened to us, and he benefited from that. You did too,
right.
and your home equity right now, like that could be college tuition, you know, that could be like generational changing for your family, and renters won't have that. So the message that I'm getting out there is like rental is super important as part of the life cycle, but home ownership is the wealth solution, and it's a community strengthening, it's a family strengthening, it's an America strengthening strategy for financial growth and health. And we're sort of a B to C to B business, so we're like a business that's talking to the consumer of our product, which is the broker, but then they're talking to their consumers, um, and we're my job is really, if you really break it all down, is to make that realtor out there sitting at a listing appointment look the very best that I can, like prepare that person the most that I possibly can to get the maximum value for that seller, and to more importantly, and we're not more importantly, but importantly, to find those first time home buyers and inspire them, right? To tell them that yes, it's bad, but there are programs that can get you into a house. There's a bunch of them that we've had speak at Triangle and at RRAR before, that will do things like, if you are close to qualifying but can't, they'll buy the house for you, and then coach you through mortgage qualification, and then let you buy the house from them. So it's a way for people to kind of be competitive in a heavily cash buyer environment that we're still in. And it's, to me, it's just culturally important that we put people who want to buy a house into a house so they can have what happened to your neighbors, happen to them, generational wealth over 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, that's the thing you want. So this is what I talk to elected officials about all the time, that we have to have more options for housing, because if you get people the ability to own their home, that's the way to generational wealth. That's really the only way to wealth for a lot of people in this country, is owning their home.
That's
Um,
right.
so I
There's
think,
some great programs. We just had a guy from Alabama, an old friend of mine, come up to talk about financial literacy to inner city kids in Raleigh, and he grew up in a housing project, and his mom, who was a cleaner at the school, she got was part of a government program, and she got essentially her rent check back, to put into a special account, that she used to eventually buy a house from Habitat. And that's creating equity. And that's like, like even the government knows that that's how you get people out of poverty is you create that path to equity. And she was eager and took it. And, now my buddy still owns that house and rents it. And it's it's a great story. And Triangle, invest in those programs through the Realtor Giving Network. We gave $100,000 last year, which was distributed to people that are trying to interrupt homelessness and to get people into housing. It's a challenge, when we're basically holding the data. The most that we can really do is try to help out a little financially to use our stage to bring in people like the author of the Wealthy Child Handbook, Delvin Sullivan. And by the way, that curriculum is available for kids from Triangle if you know of an educational outlet that needs curriculum for like fifth to ninth grade. Although a bunch of the people, adults that were in the room, took one of the workbooks to go home and go over their old stuff. So might be
Yeah.
good for everybody.
Oh, it's great. I think the last question I want to ask you, and it's sort of one we can end on with a positive note. Like I said, I'm fascinated by the data within the housing industry. I'm always looking at it. But what are some relevant data points that make you optimistic about the future of this area? But also, people have been obviously dealing with it, whether you're a realtor, whether you're a buyer, whether you're a seller, not so much sellers probably, but realtors and buyers. It's been a tough couple of years. Is there some optimistic news that says things are shaping up in this area?
Yeah, I mean, so I think for our area, they're more than just shaping up. Um, I think that if you look at the surveys that come out from the Commerce Department and from like places with actual real data, we have one of the largest inflow migrations into the area, and not just the city but the state of anywhere in the country. And if you put Raleigh up against you know national markets, we're still a good bit smaller than places like Austin, um, that I've cited a couple of times, Jacksonville, that are just growing, big places that are growing very rapidly. And the median home price has absolutely created a bit of a headwind for that. But I think that the health of the economy here is going to leave Raleigh in the top 10 or 15 cities for growth in the whole country. So the question for me is, uh, I mean, when I'm looking out of my window in downtown Raleigh at all the construction and the trains going by, um, how are we going to do it? Like it's going to happen, but how are we going to do it in a way that makes the place more attractive for people? You know, people move to Wake Forest and Raleigh and Chapel Hill, and to Durham because of the places that they are, and we want to retain that quality of life. I've dissed Atlanta and Austin a couple of times, but I think we have things that they don't. But we're growing so fast we could lose it if we're not really conscious about it. So um, I've got an interview coming up with another media outlet in just a minute, and what they want to talk about is the crisis and affordability, which is sort of the opposite of the market not being healthy. It's the opposite of that. We're looking at multiple offers again. We're back at median, or excuse me, the average list price is back to 100. Um, After mortgage rates doubled, that went down a little bit, and it was the highest it's ever been in within the last 12 months, and the lowest it's been in 8 years or 10 years in the last 10 months, both. So there's volatility in the market, but it's definitely returning to a place where if mortgage rates tick down at all, we'll be back in the multiple offer situation next summer.
That'll be great. So Matt, I appreciate you taking time out of your day to be with us to talk through all of that. We might have to do a part two because I think there's a lot more to unwrap and talk about, but we really appreciate your time and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Anytime.
All right. Thanks.